Welcome to Bleach Revisited. I am Karakura Gold, your host of this series in which we will be reading every single chapter of the Bleach manga, providing critical analysis of the art and narrative, as well as personal response to these chapters. We'll also be discussing how the chapters connect to the rest of the series. As usual, we begin these videos with a reading of the chapter that we are currently on and discussing for the video. This is Chapter 85, Intruders 2, Break Through the Roof Mix. What a tiny patch of sky. What's this? The sky is glowing? Bleach, Chapter 85, Intruders 2, Break Through the Roof Mix. Bleach. It crashed! It crashed into the Shakonmaku, the soul shield membrane, and stopped! The impact didn't destroy it. What spiritual entity could be so dense? What's going on? We got to the shield somehow, but why aren't we falling? Stay together! The cannonball melted when it hit the shield. The wreckage is tangled around us, but it won't last. Soon it will swirl and disappear. If we're separated when that happens, we'll all be hurled in different directions by the vortex. What the? It's begun! Whoa! Whoa! No! I'm getting sucked in! Ah! Get away from me! Don't come this way! What are you guys doing? Grab someone close to you. Don't get separated. Crap! Crap? What's that supposed to mean? Hey! Lend me your shoulder. Mr. Yorichi, are you? Chad! 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 Don't worry, he'll be alright. But if you hope to encounter him again on the ground, you'd better think of a way to save yourselves. Or Hime, Ichigo! Whoa, so they're shooting off in different directions. Which one is it? The strongest one. Which one is it? Hold on, are you? Hinagiku, Bygone, Lily, Santen, Keshun. I ended up alone, but perhaps this will prove more convenient. Hey, what the? Stay back! Become sand, Seppa, rock wave! That goofy spell of yours saved us. Thanks, Kanju. How long is that spell of yours supposed to make you cough? Yeah. You got some nerve to kick the man who just saved your life. That wasn't a kick. That was my way of saying thank you. What? Really? Yahoo! Lucky me. We were hiding out here because we didn't feel like being deployed, and the intruders fell right into our laps. Lucky, lucky me. It's my lucky day. But it's not so lucky for you. Huh? I had already detected the boy's soul wave, so I knew he wasn't home. But right now I'm recruiting members for the Karakura Superheroes, a special unit that will protect Karakura City from evil spirits while the boy is away. Since you could see that thing, that means you must have the gift, sister of the boy. So what do you say? Will you defend Karakura City with me? By the way, that thing you saw was an evil spirit called a Hollow. Jeez, are you done yet? What? Evil spirit? Superheroes? Sounds lame. And that is it for Bleach Chapter 85, Intruders 2, the Break Through the Roof mix. At least I'm pretty sure that's the chapter. Let me realize that I got it wrong after spinning on it. Yeah, hey, Break Through the Roof mix. It's hard to forget things like that, but yeah, phenomenal chapter. I forgot how good this chapter was and how much I enjoyed it, but there is so much going on. Now, if you ever see the inks washed out like this, what I believe that this is that actually the original print in the manga was a color page. So this will happen a lot in Shonen Jump, where you'll get if you have like a really hype chapter, or if you're the opening chapter for Shonen Jump, things like that. Typically, Shonen Jump will feature your manga, right? So the first few pages will be in color. So this page, as well as this cover, were in color whenever they ran in Shonen Jump, and then you had this black page, and then it was back to the black and white inks. Notably, what I have is the collected Tankobon volumes as they were published here in America through Viz. So I have the Viz translation of the collected volumes, and unfortunately, those didn't print the color pages as they were done in the weekly publication. So this officially actually is a color page. That's the reason why it looks washed out this way, and you'll see that happen sometimes. So what I urge you to do is, if you can, go just find online scanulations, really. Because I'm pretty sure that Bleach's Viz's website just features the scans from the Tankobon collected volumes until a certain point. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that they eventually replaced that all with the volume scans rather than the weekly ones like they were doing, which is really unfortunate because you do lose this color that was originally there and actually, done by Kubo Tite, or at the very least done by Kubo and his assistants. There was coloration work done in an official capacity. Which I typically don't try to urge people to read the colored version, because there is a full color version of the manga that does exist out there that is, as far as I know, an official release. But I don't know the capacity that Kubo worked on that. And also, I value the line work that Kubo put in a lot, and the inks that Kubo uses, and a lot of that gets lost in the color version. There are some spreads that I will admit look nicer in the color version, or some moments that are more effective because of the use of color. But I tend to appreciate the as it was done stylings of the black and white of the inks. I like seeing the inks. It's not as terrible as like the kind of coloration you'll get in some American comics is so bad that like it ruins the actual drawings that were done by the artist, and it's unfortunate when that happens. You have to find a good colorist that actually can highlight and bring out the original art, rather than one that's going to ignore your shading or your intent for composition, because color can change composition a lot. That said, again, these were originally intended to be published in color, so Kubo at least would have had an idea of how that color would have been done, and maybe a little bit of say over that. I'm not entirely positive of how the color volumes work, but I'm pretty sure that the mangaka themselves work on it for the weekly Shonen Jump releases. So, like I said, I urge you to go and look up Chapter 85 of Bleach, Intruders 2, Break Through the Roof mix, and go and find those color pages for it. If I can actually find some myself, what I might start doing for these videos is just at the very end, I might include those those color pages, especially the color spreads. Those 2-page spreads, if I can get those condensed into one image, I'm going to go ahead and do that, because I really feel like you're missing out on not getting the intended experience of Bleach, and I want this to be, something that serves for that experience, because I want these videos to represent what the experience would be like if you were reading Bleach weekly, or at least on a regular basis, right? And not being able to hold it physically in your hands will always be different from how I think it's intended to be experienced anyway. It's something that, it can't be overstated how much it affects like turning an actual page into a thing, or being able to see the entire page in the focus panel by panel, or see the page-wide composition, or even the spread composition. If you ever read Watchmen does a lot of page spread compositional stuff that's pretty significant. That's in Western comics. But manga could do this all the time. I mean, we've talked in great length about how Kubo really uses the page turn to change scenes, to have really significant moments, and you're going to see a ton of that in this chapter too. So Kubo's very cognizant of the physical media that he is producing Bleach on, and so therefore, the way you should experience Bleach truly is through the physical media. That's why I'll always encourage you to go and actually buy the manga. I mean, ideally, you would be able to read it in Shonen Jump weekly, but getting all those collected volumes of Shonen Jump would run you so much money right now, because I mean, it's a dime store kind of. You buy it like at a weekly, off of a rack kind of thing. It's like a newspaper almost. It's just a weekly publication. That sort of thing, which we don't really. We I guess we have magazines here in America, but they tend to be more like monthly or periodicals. Um, Whereas, yeah, like weekly publications tend to be more in the realm of news rather than zines or things like that. We don't really have something akin to Shonen Jump, other than, of course, the American Shonen Jump. But I don't think that releases weekly. It's all digital now, anyway. But whenever I was young, you could actually get the physical copies of Shonen Jump in America, which was weird. Like you could get like the English translated versions, and I haven't done my homework on exactly like what like if they week for week pumped that out or what it was, but it was kind of a strange artifact, nevertheless. And I kind of wish that I still had a few of those kicking around because I never held on to them, but they were really cool. I just I like the idea of you have like 20 different manga series and you go and you can read a chapter here or there of like the ones you like. You can like read other things. There's like little interviews and art segments, and it's a cool thing. And if you've never read Shonen Jump, like if you've never held a physical copy of Shonen Jump in your hands, I highly recommend that you go out and you find a copy, order it online, something like that, because yeah, it's good stuff. And yeah, so like I said, I think I'm gonna plan to, if I can, because I'm already editing these videos, to add in, an intro and an outro bits. So I might also edit in a bit where I add the color pages right at the end of the video, give you something to look forward to at the end, especially maybe those of you that just jump out because of the spoilers. I don't know who watches these videos and doesn't watch the spoiler sections, but I'm sure that will inevitably apply to somebody. So maybe I'll start tagging, if there's anything extra, I'll time code extras, and it'll be an extra chapter at the end of each of these videos. How about that? So, this is how you know I do this in one take and it's unscripted. I have moments like these, and that makes it more genuine too. I really pride like the authenticity of a thing, and that's really my goal here, is to bring you something authentic. Yeah, hopefully concise too. So let's get to it. Let's talk about what I like about this, what's going on in the art narrative, some of my response, right? So immediately, with Bleach's terrible world building, you definitely wouldn't recognize this tower right away, right? Definitely not. What I'm saying is that Bleach has good world building, and that people say that are foolish. But instantly recognizable location, even though we've only been here once ever, and that was a few chapters ago, right? That was over 10 chapters maybe ago. Maybe not that long. At least 5, right? Anyway, and I like that we zoom in on this slot that we have, because we know that there's this window that sees out of the Sokyoku, right? And so we pull in closer and then closer, and there's Rukia and this tower of pendants looking out this slot, assumably towards her, towards the Sokyoku, to where her execution grounds, and we get her cast. There's a shadow cast over her, and then she's like just talking about the tiny patch of sky. She just has this shred of sky that she can see into, and here comes the rescue party. This big light in the sky. And then we get the cover, which I think this is a fantastic cover. I don't know that Rukia is very characteristic of the way that she tends to look. Notably, the lips are a little bit more prominent here, at least in the black and white. And I've got to figure that that's because I'm pretty sure this would have been a colorized spread page as well. So they would have maybe colored some lipstick of some sort, which I don't think of Rukia as one that really wears lipstick. So she must have had some sort of lip coloration. I assume a lighter kind of pink. Um, but we get a solemn-looking Rukia who's looking away. We have this field of blades behind them of Zanpakuto, and she's just wearing the white of her penitent robes. But then we have this great image of Ichigo tying Zangetsu to his hand, right? And I love that this not only shows Ichigo he's looking the other way, right? He's foregrounded against this larger set of Rukia, but we have these two characters in tandem. And then we get this callback to Intruders, right, which is the first chapter of the Soul Society arc that we had, where everybody was responding to the Ryoka breaking through from the Senkaimon, right? Um, and so here it is, and I love this shot of Ichigo's pretty iconic, I think, in general. The whole like tying Zangetsu to his arm and to his hand, using the cloth that's flowing off of it. And in general, just kind of like that splayed out, 5 finger kind of grip is really cool. The light over his robes, like the bagginess of the pants on a Shikaku versus how tight it is, coming around, like just like the forearm. You should go looking kind of ripped and gripped. Yeah, it's good stuff. It's good stuff. And I do like that it also calls to Ichigo typically gets disarmed in a lot of these fights, right? Ha! Kubo always disarming people. that's a little Bleach inside joke for you. Anyway, but typically Ichigo's had issues with physically manipulating his power, his weapon. It's unwieldy, it's large. He's typically that's the easiest way to kind of disarm him or remove his powers is to take up his hands. So he gets his sword caught in things. He gets acid spit at his hands. Anything to make him drop his blade. And so here it's kind of cool that part of Zangetsu's design is being worked into. Well, if I literally tie this to me, if it's so much a part of me that I can't drop it, right? That's pretty cool. So I like that like there's this evocation of Ichigo overcoming one of his weaknesses as he becomes more one with his blade. We get this kind of black page, which would have been one that kind of separated the color pages in the weekly manga from the rest of the pages. And then I like that we get this now. Notably, this does have a pretty specific shape that I might need to talk about at some point, but it immediately reminds me of the 5-pointed Quincy cross, though I don't think that necessarily has any significance. I mean, we do know that they get split into these different directions, and obviously Uryu is there, but this spell isn't like a Quincy spell or anything like that. So even though there is some reishi manipulation happening here, I think it's just a certain stylization that Kubo likes. But it does remind me of the 5-pointed Quincy cross, or Quincy Pinnacle, or whatever it is. We've seen it, like maybe once or twice so far. I do like that we do get the Soul Shield Membrane, the Shakon Maku, named here. Totally didn't make me fumble my first reading and have to restart the reading of the chapter like a minute and a half in, but yeah, it did. Of course, even Aizen is pretty wowed by what could be such a dense spiritual energy. So shouldn't it evaporate right on being hit? What is this? And so that kind of speaks towards Kukaku's technique, and especially because we know the canon's probably been around for a while. That Kukaku's developed a second technique for it, but maybe the second technique is actually so new that and like using her new invention, maybe that's so relevantly new, are so unused that even Aizen, who's a captain, isn't able to immediately recognize it, right? So this is kind of cool. This speaks towards like timeline stuff that's just kind of layered in here, but like real subtly, I do like that we get this shot of the characters before we turn the next page, and then we get them all bursting out. This is yet another kind of iconic Bleach shot. Is our main cast for this erupting out of their spirit orb before they're flung, just kind of being like held in the sky together. It's good stuff. I mean, anime characters floating around, but I love Yorichi in a lot of these segments. I love the layering of using the different characters. Ganju foreground, it's real good, and it's just pretty good shots of all the characters that we have. of course, Yorichi's still got mind on the goals here, staying together. It realizes that because of, we learned in the previous chapter that Yorichi is capable of making that orb really easy, right? Yorichi's a badass, but really understands Reishi and the manipulation of Reishi. And so Yorichi's immediately able to tell what has happened and what's about to happen. Which again, this speaks towards Yorichi's capabilities as a sorcerer or spellcaster of some kind, right? As someone who is kind of masterful in not just manipulating Reishi, but also recognizing how it's playing out, right? So where before we didn't really have a lot to go on, a lot of like moments where Yorichi really had like a feat that showed off Yorichi's prowess. I think we're getting more and more of those as we're getting into these more dangerous situations, and I really like that because it's easy to kind of hype a character up as like the super badass, but these kind of tangible moments are really nice to focus on. And I know a lot of people that care about power scaling kind of stuff, really focus on feats, right? And compare feats between different series, and I think that's nonsense because at the end of the day, it's all fiction. Who's going to win in a fight? It's whoever the writer wants to win is the real answer. Doesn't matter what their feat is. Their feat was just something that was written arbitrarily anyway. Like a lot of people like to feel like there's a consistent logic to fiction because it helps them engage with that fiction. And I think anything that helps you engage with fiction is fine. I just think power battles are a silly discussion. That's all. Like, there's too much writer in me, too much author in me to engage with the fiction. Like at that point, like whenever you're like, what if these two crossed over and they fought each other? Like my first response is often, like with Bleach especially, it's like, well, Ichigo's a fucking ghost, so I guess he'd just kill them. Right? They wouldn't even perceive him, most characters and interactions. And they're like, no, but what if they could? Or like, what if the power let them? And I'm like, well, then I guess whoever the author wanted to win really probably would win. And that's how it goes in the actual story. Huh. But there's this sense that people like to have of like, okay, well, this character we know is capable of X, Y, Z, and I think that's the problem, is that a lot of those sorts of things deny the thing about fiction that I like, which is the evocative aspect of it, and they focus instead on the thing about fiction that I care less about, which is the facts of the thing, right? And so for me, I like to think about, okay, we know this stuff about Yorichi, right? We have these facts, but that allows us to evoke this sense of like, okay, who is this cat person? What can they do, right? The more and more that we learn, the more that I want to read on to figure out, like to see if that ever happens, right? The more I'm drawn to this character. They don't even have to do the thing. It just has to be evocative. And it gets my imagination going, and I can kind of co-author all of these imaginary stories where that might be the case, right? I can build a headcanon there, and then as the series goes on, it can confirm to my satisfaction one thing or another, right? And a good author will do that intentionally and pay that off intentionally. But a lot of people, I think, have this sense of fiction in that it is rooted solely in the facts, and that destroys the capability of the fiction, right? So it's like, okay, well, this character can only do things within the realm of what they've only done, what we've only seen them do. And I think that's really dismissive towards the fiction, right? I will tell you right now that there are some characters that will appear in Bleach, like Shinigami, right? We know that Shinigami are capable of Shikai. There are some Shinigami that will appear that will never use their Shikai. And it will never be confirmed whether or not they have Shikai, whether they're capable of Shikai, or if they use their Shikai, even what it does, what its capabilities are. And for some readers, that makes them write off that character. That makes them go, I don't like that character as much, because we don't know what they do. And that means they do less, because they don't do anything, right? That's like, they're like, oh, that character doesn't do anything. They're pointless, whatever. And I think that's a kind of sad way to read something, right? Or to read or to engage with anything, right? If the only value you put in something is by the merit that of things that it's already done rather than its capability, then you're denying a fuller picture of life and a fuller picture of other things. Anyway, this is my high horse to die on. Power battles are stupid. Enjoy your fiction, but like if power battles are what get you into a series and what get you engaging in fandom and stuff, so long as you're not like shitting on anyone else's series, that's the other unfortunate kind of toxicity thing, is that often disparate fandoms really get aggressive about that kind of stuff, rather than just kind of having fun with it, which is, I think, the whole point, right? Anyway, this is all to say Yorichi's cool, and I like that we finally have a little bit more to evoke more about Yorichi here. Rather than, like I said, it's very easy to kind of try to make an evocative badass character by just having this really cool guy, or, character that seems like they're strong, but then they don't ever do anything kind of thing. That happens a lot in manga. And it's unfortunate that it is the case, and often can be disappointing. But I like that we get all these different moments that kind of speak towards this again, evocative nature for the character. Bleach, I think, does that really well. Which makes it so disappointing that some people are so dismissive whenever reading the series, but that's just, I think, an issue with how people tend to engage with fiction, and I have already ranted about that long enough. So let's continue. Again, more panels that I love. I love that we get a kind of non-plus Chad. Everybody else is sort of freaking out, but Chad's just over here like, eh. But I like that the swirl here, that they're all kind of floating in this kind of circle almost, and then we get this up thrust of everybody, right? And Chad is lifted up, but we still have our kind of character couplings for how they end up grouping, right? Yorichi is kind of in the middle and sort of alone. It's split from Ichigo. Ichigo and Ganju end up together. Chad, Uryu, and Orihime all sort of end up together, but Chad notably throws Uryu over to Orihime, and I love that moment. We'll get to that in a sec. I also love, this is a really good, just talking about page layout, having Yorichi kind of arc this way, having like this body arc that angles into this, and then this having such like top left to bottom right, sort of this momentum through it, and then Ichigo's neck arcing up this way as we get this kind of twisty spiral, and the sound effect that swoos through here. So much of this page layout is so effective towards building this like swirling momentum, and I love that we get Yorichi in the center of all of it, right? Dead center in the page, to kind of in the middle of this swirling chaos. It's good stuff. It's, again, talking about page layout, thinking about composition. I think that's one thing that often gets overlooked in manga, because your average reader, like, composition that's good is something that you see but don't realize. It's something that's there, and that's done intentionally. Like, this is an intentionally composed page, right? Kubo was very aware of how your eyes would follow through the page, through the text to here, Yorichi rolling down through Yorichi between the sight lines of these two characters, of Ichigo kind of having this arc, this swirling sort of momentum into the next page that we turn to. There's so much here that is intentional, and without me pointing out, you might not even realize it, but it lends to the feel of the experience of the thing. It lends to the like this that's what defines the experience. That's why movies have directors, right? Fantastic channel, and I might link it in the description. Every Frame of Painting is a wonderful channel you should go follow on YouTube. Hopefully it's still up as of you watching this video, because I know the guy hasn't made videos in a while. But really kind of goes into different directing styles, and has pretty short form videos about composition and just different filmmaking techniques. But just the idea that if you're a good director, sometimes, and if you think of a mangaka as a director, you're going to call attention to certain panels and certain shots and certain things that you're doing. But by and large, a lot of the work that you're doing is going to be functionally invisible to the average reader, right? And I'm highlighting this stuff because I want to call attention to it and appreciate it. But I don't expect the average reader to recognize exactly all these kind of compositional moves that Kubo's making. And I know for a fact that there are a lot of people that don't appreciate these compositional moves, don't realize the artistry really on hand here. If you go and read much more average manga, And I don't want to blow anything up. I don't want to like be like, oh yeah, this manga has way worse composition, because I'd have to look at both of them, etc. I'd have to like really get into it, and I don't. That's not what I'm really doing here on the channel. But go read some other manga and just don't read the text. Just zoom out on the pages if you're reading it digitally. Like, take it really far out, and just look at about how your eye is meant to move through the page, how the panels are arranged, how the page turns are set up, how information is presented to you visually, right? And consider that visual exchange of information the way that we're doing here, and think about the way in which the mangaka is really bringing you from panel to panel and building the sensation of a scene. Because I think what you'll find is that in Bleach, Kubo does this constantly, and it's very effective, and I love it. Whereas in other series, it's not always there, And I think that's the difference between a series that works for me and one that doesn't. Ones that really leverage their medium, right? Again, another hill I'll die on is that all art exists in its medium for a purpose. The reason why Bleach isn't first and foremost an anime or a movie or a video game or a tapestry painting, or a carving in the wall. The reason why Bleach is a manga is to tell a sequential story and to present its art in this medium. And a good artist is going to make the most out of their medium and do things that they can only do in that medium. And so there are things that are lost in the anime. Like the anime, not bad. It's not a bad anime. I highly recommend at least the first 3 seasons through the whole Soul Society arc. The rest of it, I don't know. It varies in quality, but anime can't ever fully capture what manga does, because anime is time signatured 1 for 1 second, and the anime doesn't have panels and page layouts. So while anime can do plenty of things that manga can't, and has its own strengths, it also has these affordances, but it has a lot of constraints that manga notably doesn't. And so this is why I will never tell somebody, oh, just only watch the anime for this or only read the manga, because they're separate experiences, right? They're 2 disparate pieces of art that sure exist in relation to one another, but they're not comparable. And medium is really important. Consider why you enjoy the things that you like in the medium that you enjoy, right? If you really like video games, why do you like video games instead of movie adaptations of those video games, right? Right? It's the medium matters. The medium is the thing. So, it's important then that you should appreciate the author or the artist's use of the medium, and that's part of what we do here on the channel, and that's part of what I'm trying to bring your attention to here, and part of what we're appreciating. And here I love that swirl overtakes like half of the page, right? That it goes from being this kind of tiny vortex into this massive thing immediately on page turn, and again we get Yorichi in the middle of it. I keep going to the next page because I mean to scroll down, but I don't have a scroll, so it's just the auto scrolling decides, oh, well, that means you want the next page. But I like that we get Yorichi still in the middle of all of this, but our other characters are being much more dragged. We're getting them off panel. We're getting them in ways where we can't even see their whole bodies. And even here, Yorichi, even though he's still in mid panel, we're having a lot of trouble with it, right? I think that Ganju kind of swims through the air comically towards Ichigo to grab him, and Ichigo's like, no, anyone else, right? And that we get this whole sense of like, grab everyone. I like that Ichigo's like, crap, and Ganju, love the gag of like, Ganju, like, why are you upset that, like, what do you mean, right? Of course, Chad, being an absolutely massive Chad, realizes that he can't catch Uryu, right? That Uryu's going to be dragged off on his own, right? And I love this moment where, we get Chad reaching out for Uryu. And I like this, like the little like limbing your shoulder, like clearly Yorichi's in charge of what's going on here, or at the very least, like able to move through this with ease comparatively. But being a cat can't really get everyone together on their own, right? Just has to sort of dictate to people what to do. But I love that we get the shot, you know, like where Chad's really trying to grab Uryu, he's getting pulled back. The velocity of like Uryu being pulled back across this series of panels to the middle is, I think, well executed. But this miss of hands trying to grab as Uryu then realizes he's getting flung back, and then Chad using the momentum of throwing himself, you know, throwing Orihime back, flinging himself forward, you know, out of the entirety of the thing, only to grab Uryu and throw him back to the others. Such a Chad move. Like, Chad hasn't had a lot of time to shine yet in this entire arc. And honestly, this is one of my favorite moments from Chad, like, that we've gotten so far. Like, Chad does have a lot of cool moments, but this moment I think is peak for me. It's just this self-sacrificial, like, you know, we've already had him pull Uryu out of the thing. You know, whenever we were in the Dangai and the cleaner was closing in, and Chad ripped Uryu free of it. Right here again, Chad is saving Uryu at even more risk to himself. Right, so he throws Uryu, but it's absolutely the cost of himself getting flung off on his own. And I love the way that this is, you know, paneled and executed. That we have this left-right dynamicy to it, and then Chad throws Uryu to the right, which we can, you know, the right being, you know, we're reading right to left, right? So keep that in mind. That as you turn left, you're going into the unknown. You're being flung into where the rest of the manga is, right? And so Uryu is thrown to the safety of all the others, which we know are, you know, featured to the right, and they look on to Chad, and then we pull next page to see what happens as Chad gets flung out to the left side of the manga, to the future of the manga, to the unknown, to where danger is, all on his own. And I like that stays consistent through all of this. And I love the way that the way the vortex of energy here looks is handled so well in the manga, and is really, I feel, lost in the anime. Like, this moment, I feel, is just so much more potent here. There is a sort of momentum, and like especially that moment of pause whenever everybody's hanging there in the anime, that's done well, because again, you're there with it in one time. So you can get a better sense of that time signature of, like, you know, everybody's just hung in midair. But this whole sequence, I think, works way better in the manga, just in general. Little bit of a weird, you know, like, I feel like this is meant to be Yorichi's eye or something. I can't quite tell what's happening in this middle panel, because I feel like that's Yorichi's eye, and this is sort of Yorichi's brow and face, like nose, sort of, right? But it's kind of hard to tell, and it's a little too cluttered. You know, it's not perfect. I will say, Bleach is not perfect. It's good, but there are moments like this where it's like, oh, well, that could have been maybe handled a little better. Nevertheless, I love, like, this just despair, this absolute, like, frustration on Ichigo's face, right? But, you know, everything's happening so fast, you need to focus on getting yourself free. And again, we have this left-right composition where these other characters are being dragged to the left. They're trying to meet, and I love the way that this is laid out. I love that we have Ichigo coming from the right, from safety, and Orihime and Uryu coming from the left. And of course, you know, it is Orihime reaching out to Ichigo, which I do love. You know, this call between both of them as they reach for each other, but they can't quite make it. This final flash of energy disperses them. And yeah, it's kind of wonderful. Notably, you'll see here, you know, that Yorichi is on his shoulder here, but then here in this next kind of reaching panel, Yorichi is not. So assumably at this point, Yorichi's already been flung away. And of course, they all go flying in different directions. And I do love that we get this explosion, we get this zoom out of the explosion, and then we get this shot of Kenpachi Zaraki framed beneath it as he decides to, you know, he's got to make this choice, like, which one of them do I chase, right? Which one of them is that one the one that I want to cross swords with. It's such a good moment, like such effective, and having this punctuated by that whole page of the explosion, and then this shooting of the in 4 different directions, right? And then of course, like the him kind of eeny meeny mowing it, right? Trying to consider like, oh, okay, which one of them is the strongest, right? That's who he wants to fight, the strongest of all of them, which he assumes, of course, is going to be the same one that Gin crossed swords with, and the one that he wants to chase down, Ichigo Kurosaki, right? But little would he know, it's actually a cat. Maybe. Right? But we also don't know exactly Ganju's power, but he's with Ichigo. And maybe Orihime and Uryu together, especially with Uryu's new glove. And Chad's got quite a lot of power himself. I love that we get these different shots of how everyone lands. So Chad just, he's flying down towards it and he revs up this huge punch that he's going to do to kind of try to give him enough momentum backwards. And I love this shot of Chad that we get like the spokes of his arm. He's got his, fist kind of pulling back, the tattoo stippled and looking great. Just wonderful Chad panel there. Really good stuff. And I really like the way that Chad's shirt matches the design on his arm. That we've got the black stripe of his shirt and the white stripe of the arm. It's just great character design and costuming. Of course, Orihime, she's already practiced this before, so she's ready to create this shield, the Santun Keshun, to reject the interaction of that fall, right? Everything outside of the shield, and so she'll be able to protect herself. And of course, Yurichi ruminates on the fact that maybe it'll be more convenient that Yurichi ended up alone, right? Because then maybe Yurichi doesn't have, being a cat, can just run around and infiltrate the Soul Society, no issue. So if it's just a matter of Yurichi getting to Rukia, seems like it might be easier if Yurichi was alone instead of having to run around with one of these Ryoka that they have to account for. I do like that Ganju draws this big symbol. It's reminiscent of the symbol that we saw drawn, painted down on the ground before with when Kukaku was doing the ritual to send them up. So I like that there's some connection there, but that he does this circular sort of thing to create this wave of sand. And again, we get more of that kind of elemental reishi manipulation that the Shivas are known for. And so I love that they crush into it, and it's just this dome of sand, and it's I like that boom into here, and then we get this, as the smoke clears, and then of course comedic moment as our characters climb out of the sand and they're just coughing up sand. I love that Ganju is busy trying to kind of cough it up as Ichigo and him have this sort of bickering back and forth. But then we get 2 characters that the step of a Shinigami, as you can already tell from the Chihakusho and the sandals. And of course we get them silhouetted behind Ichigo as these 2 Shinigami jump down. And this fellow's saying, how lucky he is, right? That they didn't feel like getting deployed; they were just kind of hanging out. But the intruders fell right in their laps, right? So they get to, even though they weren't marching out there to get into a fight, here they are enjoying one anyway. And I do like the designs that we get on these characters, which we'll be able to see in a little bit more detail shortly here. But I like this focus, there's so much cinematic kind of moment where we get these characters shrouded in silhouettes and darkness. They fall down, we get this slow pan up, and then we get this final reveal, right? And we already know who this character is, if you remember from it was spoiled by the volume format. So weekly, if you were reading this weekly, you would not know. But the volume did include him in our All-Stars and Stories, right? He is Ikkaku Madarame. But we do not know the name of the other fella here. That is a guy, a very effeminate sort of guy, but guy nevertheless. But I like these designs, and I like how kind of different they are. Obviously, hair versus none. But that Ikkaku has these sort of this kind of crazy like eyeliner almost, or some sort of markings over his eyes. It's just enough to kind of mark him as being like from some other culture, distinctive looking, right? It's nice, but also he's got these very thin eyes, this big smile, otherwise kind of sleek featured fella. And then the other guy over here is very fanciful, has these huge sort of wings, or feathers almost, slipping from both brow and eyelash, as well as as a sort of turtleneck thing going on. I like that we do get a little bit of a look here at Ikkaku's Zanpakuto. It feels less ornate. I like the kind of design that we get here of the splatter. It reminds me a lot of a almost of design like the guard reminds me a lot of the sort of guard that you would see on a kendo sword almost. Um, which makes sense. This guy, we'll get to know him a little bit more, but I like that we get this reverse shot. So we get the shot of Ikkaku and his ally here, and then we get this reverse shot of Ichigo and his ally here, right? And so it's a good kind of back and forth as we know that these characters are already sort of squaring up. And then, of course, we get more Don Kanonji and everything that he's kind of getting up to, right? And then he's forming this superhero squad, and then he's trying to not groom Karen, but definitely recruit her. It's weird. Don Kanonji's a weird character. Anyway, but superheroes, right? Strange men inviting you into their superhero group. Like, he's not Don Kanonji he's a weirdo, but he's not a pervert, so I'll give him that, right? Which a lot of these manga tend to have like the gag pervert character, and I guess technically that is Kon, right? But we haven't seen him for a while. Anyway, yeah. So this volume, this chapter, when I say this volume is fantastic. But this chapter, really good stuff, really fantastic. I really do love the use of the setting, the sequencing on the pages that we covered quite a bit, and just in general, narratively what's happening. Again, we get that confirmation of Kenpachi. Now it's a little muddled because he can't just go after Ichigo, right? You don't know which one he's going to show up with. So perhaps we'll get what would happen if Kenpachi found Yoriichi? What would happen if Kenpachi came across Chad, right? And so that's evocative in its own right. But then we have, the other things to consider, like, okay, well, Ichigo and Ganju are immediately met by these two Soul Reapers, so they're thrown into danger immediately. But these Soul Reapers don't seem to be lieutenants, right? They don't even seem to be captains, so this is like maybe a lower stakes fight for them to engage in if they're actually going to do battle rather than just flee. Which, come on, it's Ichigo and Ganju. They're gonna fight. Right? Like, Ganju might run away because Ganju's, we know how Ganju is. But both Ichigo and Ganju are kind of scrappy, abrasive characters who get embroiled in these conflicts and lose sight of the bigger picture because of these conflicts, right? And both of them have a bone to pick with Shinigami. So it's inevitable that they would get into a fight right away. And so here they are, getting into a fight right away. But we don't have confirmation for any of the other characters. Obviously, we can assume that they all land well enough. Yoriichi seems capable enough anyway. But, it seems as though Chad might have the harshest landing of them all. And we already know how well the Santon Keshun can protect Orihime. So, and, anyone that she's with. So it's kind of interesting. I'm looking forward to, seeing how, like this immediately... It splitting up the group in this way creates, again, as we have these A and B plots running into each other, it creates these, now we have 4 separately running protagonist groups, right? And so we can jump between them. We can have them isolated for these little moments. We don't have to kind of, balancing, like, the group dynamic with everyone together is maybe a little bit harder, right? Which is unfortunate because you'd like to see all the group fight together and get into a big battle together, but it's a lot harder to do the traditional sort of shonen manga battle sequences where everybody gets to have a fight of their own, everybody gets to shine in their own ways, right? These sort of 1v1 battle tends to be where that's at. I would love to see a series that's all like focused on 2v2 battles. That would be really cool. And like synergizing with like a partner of some type. We get a little glimpse of that in My Hero Academia, but then they never really, I don't know, they don't do as much with it as they could. It ends up being mostly a solo sort of show for a lot of it. Manga. Whenever I say solo show, I mean like the focus is on the solo theatrics of these characters rather than them working as a team, even though ostensibly that's kind of the core concept, right? That they're supposed to be all heroes together. I mean, Naruto tries to do like the 3-person teams, right? You've got this team, but very quickly, we get into the one-on-one fights, the Chunin exam, and then as it goes into the rescue arc later, that devolves into all one-on-one fights. And then as we get into Shippuden is just you have literally a whole war happen, and the war is almost all one-on-one fights. It's ridiculous. And so, we get so many instances where we get this promise of like the Inoshikacho, and all that, and it doesn't work out. And at least I do appreciate that Bleach doesn't try to kind of build this notion that these characters are going to be doing anything but one-on-one fights for the most part. So whenever we do see people team up together, it's nice to see. But that kind of coordination and teamwork is interesting. So yeah, if you know of a shonen manga or like a battle manga where it really focuses on teamwork and working together, the closest that I can really think about would be what is it called? It's going to come to me. It's a very long running series. Not One Piece. One Piece, I think, also has the issue where one-on-one fights kind of reign supreme. As much as you have the Nakama, the pirate crew, right? They tend to kind of get separated on their fights, at least from everything that I've read. What am I thinking of? It's got a very simple name. It's like which makes it hard to find. I don't think it's called Hero. It's called something. It's the one that's the Chinese military one that focuses on those warfare. And now I'm not going to remember its name. I'm not going to sit here for like 10 minutes in this video trying to recall what this was called. But nevertheless, very good series and focuses a lot on like team sort of strategies. Obviously, it's a big warfare series, so like you get everything from the individual fighting as a part of like a 5-man squad to like leading whole military units and how these larger units kind of do battles. So while you do get those one-on-one fights, you don't get as much. Like there's so much more focus on the kind of the group battling or the tactics and strategy you would have to get into fights together. But it's also much more realistic of a manga. I say realistic. It's much more tied to historical kind of battles and moments. It's a lot less fantastical. And so yeah. It's Kingdom. That's the one. I was trying to think of it as it's just called Kingdom. That's why it's hard to figure it out. Yeah, it's got a very weird and janky 3D anime that's had a few seasons thrown around, but that manga is pretty cool. But if you know of any manga where the characters really have to, especially if it's like a battle focused shonen, where the characters really work in tandem to each other, it's really focused on like 2-on-2 fights, like I said, or group battle. I'd love to read it because that always fascinates me. And I think it takes a pretty competent author to pull that off. I'm trying to think of like things that are like Zatch Bell or Gash Bell sort of does that, and that the characters fight with the Mamoto. And Shaman King sort of does that, and that the characters have the spirits that they embody and fight with. But I mean, it's still kind of one-on-one. It's just the spirit is like the weapon. Like technically, yes, Ichigo has Zangetsu there with him, but it's it's a lot less like two people working in tandem, actively, having plans with how the ways that their like powers interact. Right? It's a lot more like, okay, well, this is my sword. Say hello, right? And that's sort of how Shaman King ends up, and that's kind of how Zatch Bell is for the most part. But yeah, I like a good shonen battle manga or series, and so if you've got one like that, please let me know. But let's get into spoilers. Let's talk about how this chapter connects to the rest of the series, because I could talk about manga and other things forever, right? Let's go. So we immediately jump into, of course, Ruki in the Tower of Penitence. She's not used to the sky exploding. I do like Ichigo actually using the strap for something smart for once. I think this, of course, will get evoked and called into whenever we have this battle with Ikaku eventually. But of course, I like all the swords, the kind of battle, like the field of swords they're in. This being the Quincy Cross, I don't know that this really, it's interesting that there's essentially the 5-pointed Quincy Cross for something that's breaking into the Seirite and invading Thousand Year Blood War in mind. But I don't know that Kubo is really doing this intentionally to evoke the Quincy Cross, really. That's some 4th level shit if he is. Anyway, I like that Aizen, of course, doesn't even know what this could possibly be, right? And that again really speaks to Shiva, Kukaku really developing this in secret, or it being something that she hasn't debuted yet, at least in this capacity. Of course, all of our characters get flung. We get, like I said, that confirmation of Yurichi as a powerful kind of spiritual user. I'm trying to think of some of the other kind of foreshadowing things here. Obviously, we see in this chapter that this is how everybody groups out. But I mean, this would be archetypical of the sort of format that we end up getting through a lot of the later arcs too, where our characters, through some circumstance, have to get separated, right? So this is really Kubo kind of figuring that out pretty quickly and landing on this as like a structural thing that we'd get returned to. Of course, yeah. Chad sacrificing himself. Sad, but Chad. Having to help Uryu again, though, that's kind of interesting because like this is the second time that Chad has had to pull Uryu out of danger at risk to his own self. And I narratively, I don't know that we really get a lot of Chad doing that. I wish we would have gotten a callback to that in the Thousand Year Blood War. Like some Chad saving Uryu at his own expense, and then Uryu maybe being able to finally pay back all those times that Chad saved his life. Because honestly, a lot of times we think about Chad in relationship to Ichigo, right? But it's kind of wild how often in the beginning of this arc Chad is saving Uryu's life, and really doing a lot for Uryu. And so, yeah, I wish that maybe Chad and Uryu's relationship was developed a little bit more throughout the manga. Because, again, so often Chad ends up kind of being seen through the relation that he has to Ichigo. Yeah. Of course, they get thrown together. Pretty classic. This won't be the last time that Orihime reaches out towards somebody and then they get pulled away, perhaps for good, right? Orihime reaching out to other people is pretty common, seems. I'm of course referencing Ulquiorra. This would happen again, right? There would be this sort of reaching but never being able to quite touch. I think it's an image, or it's sort of this evocative image that I think Kubo likes to come back to, right? And so, of course, we'll get that here, and we'll get that as we go forward. But also the idea of Ichigo and Orihime being these two people that are sort of reaching out towards each other, but whatever the circumstance may be, they can't quite come together until the end of the manga. And there are people that really get upset by Ichihime shipping and it being canon that they end up together. But it was here all along, bud. It was here all along. Anyway, of course, Kenpachi trying to figure out which direction is cute stuff, because as we know, he hasn't practiced any of his Shinigami skills. He just fights people and goes off of instinct. I like here that, Chad does end up getting a safe landing, but we also know that this is his defensive arm, right? So it only makes sense that it's able to shield him from a landing because it is the shield arm of the giant. Oh, ho, 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 ho. I don't know that that's as intentional, but I do like that is sort of the facet of it here. We here get yet this other kind of drawing to manipulate things, which is pretty cool. I don't know why he's doing, Naruto hand signs for it, but hey, do what you gotta do, Ganju. Slapped into the sand. Of course, thinking about Ikaku and, oh boy, I had Yumichika. Whew, I was like, I was just thinking like, oh, Tsukishima, right? He shows up here, right? Tsukishima's, my favorite character in all of the manga. I don't know why my uncle's in this manga, but there he is, right here. Um, but I do like that we do get them showing up. This is characters that I really enjoy, right? This idea of it being his lucky day. And if you think about it in the grand scheme of things, maybe it really is that Ikaku gets to have this chance meeting with Ichigo, and perhaps that changes his trajectory as a character, and part of why he survives the entire series, right? I don't know, could be, especially because not only does Ichigo spare him, but Ichigo also ensures that he will continue to live, right? Of course, I do like that we also have these characters paired off in the way that we know that their battles are going to end up, where Ichigo is much more loud and forward character, as same as for Ikaku, whereas Yumachika is going to take on Ganju. But Yumachika and Ganju both have an abrasive side to them, right? They both have this sort of easily tarnished pride about them, almost. Um, so it's interesting. There's definitely a parallel between those characters, even though they are definitely different sides of like the same coin. Where Yumachika very much is about like this sort of ostentatious presentation and very aware of the way that people are presenting him. But I think Ganju is too. Ganju's the one dressed up in his hero outfit and shit. You know, Ganju is he has like sand and fireworks abilities. Like he is, even though he's uncouth and Yumachika would call him ugly, I think there's more in relation to the two of them than they let on. Ganju is a little bit more honest about his abilities and himself, but he still puts on these sort of strongman airs whenever I think he's a more sentimental character, as we've seen so far. Just like Yumachika is, has this sort of puts on these strongman airs as well, even though he's just a beautiful soul sucking boy. Um, and of course, Don Kanoji being goofy, right? But yeah, that's about all that I have for this chapter. If there's other stuff that you see that kind of you feel as though might be sort of spoiler stuff worth mentioning in that realm, do let me know. I don't really see any other big moments of foreshadowing here, but it is what it is. I'm going to, of course, make sure to first say, hey, if you made it to the video, if you made it to the end of the video, thank you so much. Congratulations. Welcome to the end. Please do give the video a like to represent your capability for getting this far. Let me know. But if you didn't like it, let me know in the comments. Ha ha ha. Honestly, though, I like any amount of engagement. I like knowing kind of what people feel about this series and seeing what your thoughts are, and just knowing that the things that I create aren't just going into the ether, but that other people can enjoy them as well. And maybe, hopefully, I've brought something new to your attention and made you appreciate this series a little bit more, and perhaps even appreciate manga or even life a little bit more. I mean, if I can do one thing in my life, I just want to spread that sort of joy and that sort of optimism. And so, yeah, thank you for being a part of that. If you want to support this channel a little bit more, you can always support me on Patreon. Currently present on screen are the patrons for this episode. And yeah, that's as of this episode, the people that are supporting me on Patreon are on screen, is what I'm trying to say. Oof. But thank you so much for supporting me, everyone here. I really do appreciate it. Of course, do keep in mind, if I do manage to find those color pages, I will be including them here at the very end. But otherwise, this has been it for the episode for Bleach Revisited. I've been Karakura Gold, reminding you that spirits are forever with you. Stay gold.